it's setting up. This always leads to us. Hi, everybody. I know it's running live, but on my side, it looks like it's setting up. So give it us a second. And here we go. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Chicagoland Chats. My name's Adam Serwinski, as always, with Sidebar Insurance, joined by the ever-popular Butch Zemar. Butch, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, everybody. I'm Butch Zemar. I help small to mid-sized companies navigate the thing that they call the Affordable Care Act through employee benefit programs and worksite benefits.
So basically, he does health insurance and all the kind of work benefit needs that you have as a business or as an individual. I am actually an insurance broker that just like Butch, except I handle the property and casualty side, meaning we do your home, your auto, your business, your professional lines. What if you have an insurance risk? One of the two of us can handle it. And as people in the insurance world, we love to take care of you. So that's why we're setting up these discussions this week. We've been having several over the current week. And today we have Christopher, or Chris as he likes to be called, Higgins from FutureLink IT, who's going to talk to us about some tech solutions for the work from home people, so that maybe you ran into some stuff over the week, bandwidth issues or technology and application issues. He's going to be able to give us some insights on ways that you might be able to improve that. So Chris, why don't you introduce yourself as well as your business to everybody?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm, as he said, I'm Chris Higgins with FutureLink IT. I'm the sales manager for FutureLink. So I've been there 13 years, and my role, I really help business owners from 1 or 2 computers up to 150 computers, really plan and engineer their network. And then we have a full team of network engineers that help us implement those plans. So yeah, it's been an interesting week as far as all the work from home hurdles that we've been through. So I look forward to the conversation.
So just to start it off, what are the main headaches that you're seeing businesses on operating when they're looking at either businesses or even from the employee standpoint, that they're the biggest hurdles they're having during this work from home time?
Well, so the biggest thing really is, what does every user need access to? So, and that might be different by department. So administration needs access to your accounting software and inventory and stuff like that. Whereas, sales is more driven by phone and email and stuff like that. So each department typically ends up having different needs. Now, we're looking at, typically first thing ends up being the phone access. So, who's going to work from home? Is anybody going to stay at the office? Because then we could start talking about, is somebody going to triage calls from the office and then forward, or then have people follow up? And then what applications they need. Luckily, over the last couple of years, a lot of applications have gone to the cloud. So that part is a lot easier because they can access that data from anywhere. But that runs into really two pieces that are tough. If anybody's running a local application that's running on the server at the office, where they don't have remote access to it, or they can't do VPN, and then how to access their regular files. So we've helped customers walk through those conversations, and then, either department by department or company by company, we're deciding, are employees taking their PCs home? Are they using a personal machine to remote into their work machine? Or are they purchasing laptops and or Chromebooks for their employees at home to remote in? Because there's a lot of security issues that come into effect when you're talking about allowing employees on their personal machines connect to the corporate network. So you don't have any control over whether they have antivirus, or if they've got viruses on their machine, and then you connect them via VPN, and now they infect the entire corporate network. So there's a balance between access and security, and we always have to balance those two different needs.
So talk about the steps you would take if you're an employee, maybe this is their first time working from home, and yeah, granted, it's going to be based on what type of system they're using to remote in, but what are the first steps that an employee should take, or a person should take, in order to kind of safeguard, or even just dial in? And you're like, what are the baby steps or basic things they can do to kind of start this process or feel comfortable through it?
Yeah, so let's make the assumption the employee is using their personal machine to access the corporate network, because we're seeing a lot of that right now. And so the first thing is they need to make sure that they have an up-to-date antivirus. Whether that's the corporate's providing you one, or if you just have one that you've purchased yourself, but make sure that's up to date, run a full scan. And then second step is going to be accessing the corporate network. So most of our customers, they have a firewall in that allows them to do VPN, which is a virtual private network, or a secure tunnel between your computer and the corporate network. That's going to allow you to make sure that nobody on the internet can read the data as it's going through. So whether you're entering credit card numbers or social security numbers and stuff, any of that kind of data, or just seeing transactional data go across the web. So that essentially makes it like your machine is at the office. From there, we have to look at the security around that. So, are you allowing your employees to, basically transfer large amounts of proprietary company data to their personal machines? So we want to limit access to that as much as possible. So that's easier when you have a personal machine and they're just remoting into their work machine. In that scenario, everything stays on the work machine. You're really only sending keystrokes and mouse interaction and then viewing the screen. The computer at the office is doing all the hard work. And then if anybody's in a compliance industry, like healthcare, doing credit card transactions, to have those conversations and make sure the employees aren't saving any of that data on their personal machines, whether it's social security numbers, credit cards, PII data, any of that kind of stuff.
So bringing that up, Chris, so how do you, I guess a business owner, how do you prevent that from occurring, being saved on a personal laptop? And then what if it does happen? Then is there a protocol that comes into place for the employer and the employee for that matter? Because what if it was completely unintentional and they don't want anything to do with the data, but it's sitting there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in those environments, the easiest scenario is to leave the corporate computer at the office, so that, you're just giving the employee RDP access to that PC. Hold on, I got a call coming in. You see me again? Sorry.
Yes,
I got a call.
you're there.
Yeah. So, but then, you mentioned the unintentional thing. So, it's going to happen where they get an email with information on it, and to be able to upload it to the corporate machine, they need to save it to their local machine first. So, especially if somebody's in one of those compliance industries, a good best practice after this whole thing is over, if you have an existing IT company, or use a company like FutureLink, we can run a PII data scan on all those people's individual machines, scanning, looking for all that data. Then we can make sure it gets removed, and then disconnect the VPNs and all that stuff once this is all over.
Yeah, once it's all over, but I know we talked earlier this week and you had mentioned when I asked a similar question, but you had said it's part of a normal process for you guys to set up for it in advance. And I guess going forward, what are some of those recommendations you would say, let's set this up in advance so that we don't have this issue again if this happened, or anything happened for that matter?
Yeah, so whether they're in a compliance industry or not, so the industry's been moving, to cloud-based data. So for existing customers, we've been having the conversation at a minimum for remote salespeople, people that travel, work from home. Sometimes we have a bunch of customers that, they do kind of a hot desking thing where, somebody will be in the office 2 days a week and they share a desk with somebody that's in on opposing days. So in those kind of environments, we like to use a file sharing app that it encrypts data while it's in transit, as well as while it's in the cloud. And then the nice thing about the application that we use for that, in this scenario, we could just turn it on their home machine and they would have access to everything just like they were at work. the nice part about it is the application we use, once that's over, we can disable that device and it'll automatically revoke any documents that were shared to it. So whether they were new documents that were put on that machine or just things that sync to that machine because of the file sharing app, so that they'd have local access to them. So it's definitely easier to plan in advance. Otherwise, I'm sure there's employees and companies that haven't necessarily told anybody, but they dumped a ton of documents into, Google Drive or Dropbox or something so that they could get them while they're at home. And then, none of that data is sitting in an encrypted environment and can be shared to anybody. So definitely having those conversations in advance is helpful.
Now that just to continue that conversation, that what you just said about if there's anything that gets downloaded locally, then it can revoke access to that. But how is that different? Because I think Dropbox has it and Google Drive where you could actually have a local file where you could actually dump it into the local file. But is that similar or is that completely different?
Well, so the first part of that is like how you're sharing it and making it a local copy, but not all of those file sharing apps have the ability to revoke a document. So you can remove a share and it won't, most of them, it will just disconnect the syncing between it, but it won't delete the file off the local machine. So the one we use is even smart enough that if you move a document out of the shared folder, it tracks it. So, most of the time, even if somebody does that, like an employee is copying stuff off before they quit or, anything like that, most of the time it'll pull those documents back too. So, whereas Dropbox and Google Drive, once you share that, if that, most of the time, even if you unshare it to somebody, it would still be available to them on their local machine.
Good point.
So if someone was, but from the counter position, if someone's thinking about, or if they're now put in a position where they're working from home and they're having to access these things, and maybe they don't want to share their personal computer or have these items on there for the very reasons you're talking about. They're a risk. They don't want the personal information on their on their machine. What are things that what are processes and procedures someone could make to protect their personal computer after this is all done and make sure that none of that data kind of either stays or any of that kind of stuff transfers over that they would feel maybe uncomfortable handling or even having on their hard drive?
Well, and for some of those things, as long as the company doesn't have an app that requires local connection to the server, this is a lot of times manufacturing ERP software that has inventory management and doing SQL transactions, stuff like that. Might be a local accounting application, like if they're using QuickBooks, a local copy of QuickBooks versus the QuickBooks in the cloud. So the another option is that the employee can take their their corporate computer desktop home with them. We can still make the corporate VPN connection so that they can access that data, but there's certain kinds of applications that won't work in that environment.
So let's talk about solution-based kind of discussions. We talked a little bit about the sharing of data, the VPN usage, kind of logging in, some cloud-based considerations. When it comes to things like this, obviously we're using Zoom right now for our interface between them. Are there other solutions that you think would enhance a person's work-life balance or work experience, like video conferencing, VoIP phones, stuff like that might be able to improve and maybe cost-effective ways for them to have an improved experience while working from home?
Definitely. There's a bunch of different parts and pieces out there. And so one thing we've implemented for a bunch of our customer is Microsoft Teams, which so it'll do video conferencing like Zoom here. It will, it does chat really well. So you can set up different teams. So if it's a department or whatever, so we're using it internally for our inter-office communication, because now we have 5 network engineers that are all in a different place. We can have a room that when a customer need comes in, we can dump it into the team, and then anybody can grab it and you can comment on it. Because I think one thing that a lot of our customers are having is the inter-office communication. So now, you're on your cell phone and, talking to a customer, but you can't just lean back and ask, your coworker, hey, do we have any of this in stock, or can I ship this by Friday, or whatever the situation is, right? So you have that convenience of being in the office. So Microsoft Teams is good. A lot of the voice over IP phone systems also have a chat. So whether it's Ring Central or Nextiva or any of that. So if someone has a voice over IP phone solution, a lot of times that might have features you haven't been using that might help you through this time. But so chat, video conferencing have been a big new addition for a lot of people. And then, like we talked about, the data sharing in the VPN has been a big piece of it.
Very cool. Now, you talked a little bit about Microsoft Teams. You talked about Zoom or even Ring Central and those other chat functions. Do those, like, would Slack be in that as well? One of those kind of solutions?
Yes, Slack is. They have a free and a pay version, so it's very similar to Teams. So, but anybody that, if you have a 365 subscription, you own a copy of Teams already. So a lot of people have it and they don't know it. There is a free version of both of those, so you can get some limited chat features with either one of those. Yep.
Very cool. Now, really quickly, I just want to kind of reach out again to the people who are watching at home. We see we got some people on there. If you have questions for Chris about specific solutions to your scenario or to what's going on in your office, or even just your everyday life, as we're all trying to adjust to a life with kids at home and work from home and everything at home, please feel free to jump into the comments, make sure that Chris gets and addresses your specific issues and provide you with some value.
So while we're waiting for some of those questions to come in, in light of the current events and a lot of people working from home, so there's nobody in the office. So if this changes the pace of how business is conducted going forward and offices are being eliminated with inside companies, and you had made a comment that people could log in remotely for secure data and have everything on the server. So if they remove the office completely, where does that server actually sit?
Yeah, so it's kind of a question that usually end up talking about at a application to application level. So usually, like if someone has QuickBooks Desktop, it's really easy to put QuickBooks in the cloud, and now you have a cloud-based app, and that can be a standalone solution. But then, file sharing, you could be using OneDrive or SharePoint or Dado's Workplace, which is what we use. And then the hard thing really becomes on, those specialty applications, whether it's a doctor's office that has a local practice management software and it's not cloud-based, or a manufacturer that has their ERP that requires a SQL-based instance. A lot of those applications are behind the times as far as getting to web-based. So, sometimes that might mean, changing applications. We also do custom programming. So we have a customer that has an ERP solution, but they're working on doing exactly what you were talking about. And those remote people, they only need access to really 3 screens in the whole software program. So we're actually developing those 3 screens into a web app to interact with their local database, essentially turning it into a web app. Now, that's not always a cost-effective solution. We're working with another customer because the age of their application, they were already looking at something. And I would definitely, when you come up on those opportunities, to make sure you're looking at a web-based solution, because then there isn't any extra cost or headache. You can access it just like you would at the office from anywhere.
So one of the things that I think people may be intimidated by what you're talking about is all these different solutions, and they're fairly fragmented, right? So when I think about this, I think of, oh my goodness, look at the tech stack. And for people who aren't familiar with that term, a tech stack is just like all of the layers of different type of technology your office uses or you may use personally. Do you have any recommendations for how someone or a business owner or even managers can manage the kind of stress or anxiety having such a fragmented tech stack can kind of create?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody wants to try and have a single app, right? So whether that's using Microsoft or using, whatever their ERP software integrates to, and every one of these platforms, they do one or two things really well. and then the other pieces, they do okay. So it's really knowing that you're going to end up with a multi-tiered stack and multiple pieces in different places. But really, as you walk down that road, making sure that you put together a solution that talks together. So whether it's an API integration or just syncing using, a third-party app that will connect your CRM with your database or whatever those things are. But it becomes more and more important to make sure that you're having the conversation in advance, that making sure all of those things are backed up, that all of those things are secured individually, because it's just not a world where we keep everything in the office, put a firewall in front of it, and everything's okay, right? So the cybersecurity threats that are out there, are a big deal. That's, I think cybersecurity is probably the biggest threat to a small business today. You have one PII data breach, and you could be looking at $100,000 to $500,000 worth of costs associated with that, depending on how much data is lost. So really, to have a trusted partner that can help you make these decisions, because they're different for every business. So whether businesses started completely virtual, and they have people in other states and stuff, but they started that way, versus the company that's been in business for 60 years and is always has all this local data. So we usually use the approach that we take one application at a time, or one type of files at a time, and we move them. And it's really easy to move the data. It's hard to change habits and change how people do their process. So taking that slow. Obviously, this COVID-19 scare has accelerated that for a lot of people. But definitely just take a metered approach to it, one application at a time, and then move forward.
It's interesting you say that. You and I had talked about that. I think, what I get summary of some of the conversations that you and I have had, where sometimes you just got to stop the bleeding. You got to start somewhere and piece it together. There's some of these startup companies or these solopreneurs that really can't financially afford to jump into all the software all at one time, or it's overwhelming aside from the finance side of it. So maybe, like, I don't know if you could shed some light, if somebody was in the startup mode, like what are maybe one or two basic things you need to do right away to protect some of that security and that data?
Yeah. So first, you really have to plan on your data from a limiting access standpoint. If you take cybersecurity first, and you build things on secure platforms, and then limit who has access to what. So if you think about a doctor's office, the office manager might need access to billing records, but doesn't need access to the diagnosis itself, right? Just needs the billing code, the billing information, that kind of stuff. So historically, everybody just dumped stuff in a shared folder and everybody had access to everything. But so depending on the business, that might mean changing folder structure. So you save things by year and then by customer, or the other way around, so that you can limit, person A at the company only needs access to these 5 companies' data, 5 clients' data. Or they only need access to the current year's data. And so some of that's always a conversation to have with the business owner, because a company like a graphics arts company that has huge files, and typically is storing them by company, versus somebody that's doing accounting and financial stuff, they really only need access to this year or last year, right? So thinking about that before you start making some of those decisions. And then the goal is by, I know everybody's tired of being nickeled and dimed about $2 a person for this and $5 a person from that, but compared to a lot of these enterprise type software platforms, that it would be $60,000 to get your first user. It's just changed. So you can get a mailbox for, $6 or $7 a month. With spam and security, you might be at $10 a month. But so for 2 users, it's only $20 a month, right? Some of those things, the numbers then get flipped over when you get to be the big enterprise. So at $10 a mailbox for 100 users, that's $1,000 a month, right? So now it's big money, and people see $120,000 a year for email. But then we can look at bringing some of those things in house and having more of a capital expense.
Interesting. Now, so we've obviously talked a little bit about the business from a business perspective. We talked about it from the individual perspective. Is there any other piece that you feel like in the clients you've been interfacing with, the individuals you're interfacing with that we haven't discussed that would be beneficial given the current climate?
Well, so I think the last piece is really the stress in holding your employees accountable, right? So there's probably a decent percentage of people that are working from home. They really aren't doing much, so when you're looking at some of these apps, whether it's the chat or some, how do you know that your people are actually working? And then the flip side of that is, how do you manage your employees' stress about that? So in the last week and a half, we've been probably 3 times as busy supporting our end users, because we're supporting twice as many devices, right? So I think, helping your employees manage the stress as well as holding them accountable is another piece of the conversation that needs to be had.
And what would you recommend to do that, to manage that stress, both from a perspective of holding them accountable, but also kind of giving them the freedom to like either walk away or feel like that, now that work's invading their home, that it doesn't necessarily have to be there all the time?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the chat's a big piece of that, because you can, when people, if they're getting a call from a customer and they can't walk and ask the owner, right, down the hall like they used to, being able to get answers, to be able to handle those things in a timely manner, is really important to the employee stress, because they feel like they're a little island right now. They don't have the support of their other team. So to be able to use a groups or a chat or a team, something like that, is very important. And then as far as holding people accountable, it helps too, whether it's via email or through Teams or a chat or a Slack or any of those solutions, to kind of keep and monitor the employee's response time, right? If you ask them a simple question, it takes them 2 hours to respond. You can have that conversation. There are, for other kinds of businesses, there are applications out there that we could deploy that would do keylogger tracking and stuff, so you can see that somebody's actually been typing their keyboard or using their mouse and stuff. That's a little bit big brother a lot of times, but if you have a large workforce and are concerned about productivity and having those conversations about whether we let people work from home or do we downsize our workforce during this time, it could be a useful tool.
Interesting. Butch, you have any more questions?
No, I think we ran through, like you said, we did some, things, technology solutions and security for the business, some things to look for the employee or the work from home mindset, and then into some apps and things to help protect us overall. I think we covered a good call on this one.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate all your time and insight today. It's been fantastic. If you guys want to get in touch, Chris, why don't you give them your contact information, email address, maybe phone number. So if they found some solutions here that were helpful, you can go ahead. Yeah,
thanks. Not a problem. So yes, I'm Chris Higgins. The company is FutureLink IT. So our website is FutureLinkIT.com. My direct number is area code 224-523-8063. And my email address is Chris, CHRIS, at FutureLinkIT.com. So FutureLinkIT.com.
And we'll be sure to highlight those in the posts. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be in the comments, as well as on Facebook. It'll be on the notes, so that people can easily get a hold of Chris, maybe improve the rest of their work from home experience, maybe help their team deliver a little bit more. In the coming weeks as we kind of settle into this kind of COVID-19 stuff. So thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate all that you're doing, particularly also for your local area. Chris, people didn't know he's a trustee as well for his local township, local village. So I'm sure he's given a ton of effort right now to helping people through this difficult time. Thanks again. We'll be back next week. We'll try and highlight our schedule coming up over the weekend as it solidifies. But we'll be back next week with other things to hopefully help you and your neighbor and your community get through this kind of difficult time. Butch, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, goodbye. Hey, thanks for your time, Chris. Hopefully everybody had some value out of it.
Yeah,
No
thanks
problem.
everyone. Yeah, everyone
Thanks,
stay
Adam.
safe.
Thanks
A lot, Chris. Thanks so much for everybody out there for watching. Hope you have a safe, healthy, and low-key weekend. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks again. Check out our other videos from earlier in the week because they provided value as well. Looking forward to that. Talk to you guys. Have a great next week. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Bye.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.